Hey everyone, welcome. My name is Kaser. I'm the engineering site lead for DoorDash Toronto. And this is a meetup event to talk about the challenges we solve on logistics and fulfillment with an international lens. So on the panel here, I have my colleagues, which we're going to talk about in a second, but we have representation from senior leaders on tech and product side, as well as our own co-founder and CTO Andy Fang, who due to some travel issues had to record his message, but has a very exciting message for this group as well. So let's kick things off.
Everybody, I'm Andy Fang. I'm one of the co-founders and CTO at DoorDash. Really excited to have you here today to talk through our international logistics and fulfillment systems and how we're building those here at DoorDash. I'm going to give you a quick intro just in terms of DoorDash's origins and mission and how we got to where we are today with respect to our international ambitions. And then I'll hand it over to the teams to talk through some of the really cool stuff we're doing to make sure that we're globalizing our platform. So I'll start off and talk about DoorDash's mission. And so when we founded the company back in 2013, the mission statement that we came up with, and it's still our mission statement today, is that we wanted to empower and grow local economies. And what we really meant by that is we wanted to find ways to help local merchants grow their sales in an increasingly online world. And actually what we did back when we started the company in Palo Alto, California, is we ended up interviewing hundreds of local business owners throughout the Bay Area, asking them what they needed to help them grow their sales. And we stumbled upon a really interesting insight that a lot of these merchants wanted to actually deliver goods to customers, but didn't have the delivery capabilities to do so. And so that's where DoorDash really got started. And if you fast forward to today, we've done a lot to really help grow local merchants in the US, but really what we want to do is grow local economies worldwide. And we've made some progress in terms of getting to that point. And I'll talk about where we actually first got started in terms of our ambitions outside the US, which really started in Canada. We launched in Canada back in November 2015. In fact, Toronto was the first city we delivered outside of the US, and Toronto ended up being our 20th major metropolitan market that we operated in. And I want to talk a little bit more about what we've done outside of Canada in a bit. But before doing that, I really want to pause a little bit to talk more about what we're trying to do in Toronto outside of operating deliveries there. Because earlier this year, we launched our engineering site in Toronto back in May 2021. And we actually publicly announced that we wanted to hire 50 engineers as an ambitious goal in Toronto by the end of this year. And I'm proud to say that we're on track to still hit that goal. And in fact, the site is actually hosting roughly around 150 cross-functional employees, which includes product engineering as well. And last thing I want to say is that the Toronto site is actually our hub for our international expansion engineering team. And now I want to talk about what DoorDash has accomplished internationally up to this point. And so we're currently in 3 countries outside the US. We're in Canada, Australia, and in Japan. And in Canada, we're serving over 75% of the population. And in Australia, which we launched roughly 2 years ago, we're serving over 80% of the population. And we're really excited about what we've done from an expansion point of view this year, because we were able to launch in Japan earlier this summer, and we're available in 3 prefectures across the country. And before I hand over the mic, I really just wanted to take a minute or two to really talk through our engineering pillars here at DoorDash. And these are pillars that we talk through every engineer when they join the company. First and foremost, I want to talk about customer obsession. One of our operating values here at DoorDash is that we want to be customer obsessed, not competitor focused. And that's very true in terms of how we want engineers to feel empowered and build products. We want engineers to be empathetic to customer pain points and customer needs so that they can build the products and the services to best serve our audiences. Second pillar is velocity at scale. One thing I'm really proud of in terms of what we built here in the engineering culture here at DoorDash is being able to ship products very quickly. As we grow, it's important for us to maintain that velocity. And I think as we've grown, it's really important to think not just about velocity, but also about quality, reliability, and integrity. And so being able to balance those qualities with continuing to have a high velocity is paramount to our success as a company moving forward. Third, I want to talk about pragmatic solutions. We want to build an engineering culture here at DoorDash that really is focused on shipping impact to our customers. We don't want to be building engineering for the sake of engineering. We don't want to be building science experiments, for example. We want to be building things that are going to actually impact customers, whether that's consumers, merchants, dashers, or even internal employees, such as our own engineers, if we're building developer productivity products. Last but not least, impact-driven culture. We want to build a product engineering culture that really fosters collaboration between teams to build products that ultimately land well with our customers. DoorDash is a pretty operationally complex product. We're not just moving bits virtually, but we're actually moving physical goods in the real world. And in order to do that, we need to be able to collaborate within the engineering team, with operators, with product managers, et cetera, to make sure that we are having a one team mentality to ultimately delivering impact at the end of the day. So that's really it for me. I'd like to hand the mic over to our merchant team to talk through some of the cool products we're building there. Thank you very much.
On the panel, we have Nirav and Marsha, who will go next.
Awesome. So as a quick intro, my name is Nirav. I'm the product lead here for merchant at DoorDash, and will be Varsha, who is the director of engineering on the merchant team that I work very closely with. Both of us will be sharing how we've actually gone over the past couple of years to figure out how to scale our merchant products and really help support our growth and global expansion, as Andy was mentioning. Next slide. So as Andy mentioned, the mission of DoorDash is to empower local economies. And what that really means, a key part of those local economies are the merchants that operate every single day in those cities. And DoorDash's job is to help those merchants grow. And we do that by connecting those merchants with consumers, via our dashers to drive more sales. And why merchants are so important is, consumers come to DoorDash because we have exactly what they want to order, whether it is food or in more recent years, other items such as retail or groceries. And so the more merchants we can bring, the more consumers we bring. The more consumers we bring, the more sales we bring, and the more opportunities that creates for dashers to go and work on the platform. And so as a result, there's this, we call this our flywheel of kind of building from the merchant, and then it really helps drive all of the other parts that reinforce themselves and helps us scale. And as you can see, one of the merchants that that operates out of Austin, Texas, a very tasty local taco shop, has used DoorDash, to drive growth and really to actually think about how they can actually expand their business using DoorDash as a platform. So where did we start? When we started, DoorDash was a very simple concept. We operated food delivery. We served, only restaurants, and we were primarily focused in the US, as Andy was saying. But we knew that that was just the beginning. And so what that meant was, as we've grown, one of the ways that we've grown is we've expanded the number of services that we offer for our merchants. We aren't just a delivery company. Essentially we provide pickup. We have ads and promotions on the platforms to drive more sales. We have our own, white label product for merchants to go and take their own orders on their own websites. And then when we say merchants, it's transforming from just restaurants into what else can you get in your city? Things like groceries, convenience, pet foods, retail. Essentially we're going to be moving towards all of those other kinds of merchants. And then finally, in terms of geographic expansion, we are not just a US company. We operate in Canada, Australia, Japan, and want to try to see where are the places that we can go and bring DoorDash to drive value for merchants, dashers, and consumers across the board. So what does that really meant for us from the product and engineering perspective? Really, it meant that we needed to figure out, how do we go and build things to scale for growth? How do we transition some of things that used to be features into full-fledged platforms? And then how do we go and make something that really was meant for the US customer into something that serves all kinds of customers across countries. So I'll talk through a couple of those examples, and then Varsha will go into detail about the engineering problems that we had to solve that's taken us over the last couple of years. So the first one is DoorDash has scaled massively over the last couple of years. This is an example, from just the last year, from 2019 to 2020. We've essentially increased the number of merchants on the platform by 90% year over year. That is a massive amount of merchants to onboard and support. And similarly, we've tripled the amount of orders that we're sending. So all of our systems had to, essentially go through and manage those kinds of increased volumes, increased stresses. We've had to build ahead of when these things happen to make sure that we can actually, support the growth that the company is going through. Next slide. The other thing is we've gone from offering just features, things that just work on Marketplace, to Storefront, which is our white label product. So we've had to turn something that used to just be a single page into a full-fledged product across a number of different surface areas and systems. The other thing is we've transformed ourselves from a just food and restaurant business into something that serves retailers, and as a result, the menu has to transform into a catalog where you can have, instead of having 100 items on a menu, you have to be able to search through a catalog of maybe tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of items to find exactly what you're looking for, which has been a very big transition. And then finally, we needed to support our local markets. And the local markets is not just about getting the translations right. That's one part of it. But how do we actually make our products feel local? How do we make them work for the consumer just as if we were operating as a fully local company? How do we go and make sure that we can scale our regulatory? How do we make sure that we can scale things like currency and all of these other platform kinds of problems to make sure that we can go and do international expansion and continue to launch countries like, in this example, Japan. So next, I'll hand it off to Varsha, who will really go through some of the details on some of the examples that we've had to go and solve over the last 2 years.
All right, thank you, Neera, for walking us through the product side of the story here and talking through the 3 problems from the product side. I am Varsha. I'm an engineering leader in the merchant organization here at DoorDash. And today I will be speaking to you about the 3 problems that Neera just mentioned and specific examples in the engineering world on how we've solved each one of these problems, right? So the three problems right here in front of you: scaling for growth, transitioning from features to platforms, and creating an international platform, right? And I have 3 specific problems here. And just to give you more context about what merchant integration really is, or what contract platform really is, and what payment platform really is, next slide, please. I will walk you through the merchant life cycle from a product lens first and show you where these kind of products fit in before we dive deeper into how we are solving these problems in each of these areas, right? So let's start with the lead list generation. So the first thing for for each of these boxes, firstly, there are multiple products that belong to each of these boxes, and all of those products today are facing the same problem. However, we will be talking about 3 specific problems, right? So walking through this, we start with identifying. We start first with identifying the merchant to bring onto our platform, and we generate a lead list for salespeople first to go get these merchants onto our platform, right? And from there, merchants sign up with us, right? And there are a number of onboarding and activation products that they go through to set themselves up. And then once they're set up, we start the transaction process with the merchants, which is the in-store operations, like sending merchants orders or listening to signals from them, right? We've run out of guacamole, or we are too busy right now, or our prep time is much higher than before. So Dasher, please come in late. So taking all of these signals back and forth from our platforms into the merchant world and from the merchant world into our platform is done in 4 specific ways, which I mentioned there. First one is merchant integrations, which is like deep integrations with merchants, POS boxes to send orders to them and then bring in signals from their restaurant back in, right? So, so these deep integrations is number one and the biggest way that we interact with these merchants. Second is a tablet. So we give them a tablet. Again, we talk back and forth with our own tablet, which the merchant has. Third is the robocalls. So a lot of times merchants don't want the tablet or they don't have integration. So we place a phone call, a robocall to them to place orders. And then there are other manual ways, right? In addition to that, we also have products that make sure that every merchant is paid on time, in time, transparently, and we give them good insights into the business that they're doing through DoorDash and how DoorDash is adding value to their platform, right? So these are all high-level boxes in which all of our products sit in. And like I said, all of these products today need to scale, need to grow from features to platforms, and also need to accommodate for internationalization as a good problem to have and solve, right? So I will now dive deep into the 3 examples, starting with scaling for growth as a problem and merchant integration as an example for the problem, right? And how are we solving the scale problem for merchant integration? Merchant integration was one of the oldest microservice that we made at DoorDash, and it was written, in some native Python and other technologies. So first thing that we did is we restructured and re-architected it and adopted to new technologies. Second, we didn't just adopt to these new technologies, but we also made sure that we simplify our workflow to make use of the plus points of these technologies. Third, we platformized and modularized the workflows going in and out of these the platform. And then the last one is we built a centralized multi-product gateway, which was a very unique product gateway before in the restaurant world, to make it multi-product and international, right? So that's how we solve. Next, let's talk to each one of these one by one. So next slide, please. So as you can see here, we had Python and Celery as our tech stack before, and all of us know Python beyond a point is very hard to scale. We had a lot of memory leaks, and it was very hard to even analyze them. Memory dumps and getting memory dumps in Python is not very easy. It's not a type-safe language, and so it was very easy to make mistakes with Python. So we adopted Kotlin instead, which is the preferred language for DoorDash across DoorDash. There are great articles on our engineering blog here, which you guys can reference on how we went from Python to Kotlin. Kotlin is widely adopted all across DoorDash, and it is a language of choice. And there are some great eng blogs out there. Python also uses Celery, which was another bottleneck for us, and we retired that as well for Cadence. Cadence is an open source technology written by Uber, which we adopted. And it is a workflow management system with Cassandra as the backbone behind it. And so we adopted that. We also adopted CockroachDB, not mentioned here, but CockroachDB really helps us build those distributed databases, which is a capability that we highly lacked in the past, right? And next slide, please. So again, like I said, we not just adopted technology. Next slide, please. Yeah, but we also simplified our workflows using the plus point of these technologies. So the first box that you can see over there shows you how there were queues in between, how we had a number of boxes to take an order from point A to point B. But then we used Cadence, which very effectively helped us collapse APIs and helped us simplify workflows, right? All right, so that's how we simplified our workflows. Next point here. So the next point was modularization, and we'll talk about modularization in just a bit. We modularized, while we wrote the new Kotlin services, we made sure we modularize our workflows such that so it's the orange boxes there is a new service, right? It's written in Kotlin, retiring our own Python service. And you can see there are separate boxes within this. Each of these is a different module focused on a single workflow. For example, order workflow, which is a P0 workflow, needs to be highly available, whereas a menu workflow is a data-intensive workflow. Large amount of data is going through, has different problems, but we made sure that these are different modules, helps us move faster in the individual areas, 2, helps us not impact one for the other. 3, it helps us deploy. We had separate deployments for each of these. So it helps us deploy faster, and it helps us move quicker in just inventing and putting new products and features out there for the large scale that we have, right? And in the process of creating all of this, we also created the brown box there on the right-hand side, API platform, right? So API, next slide, please. So building a centralized gateway is what I'm talking about over here, where we have merchant integrations at the center of it all. And then we had small flavors of all of the features that we had for restaurant, for each of the products that we scaled into, for promotions, for self-drive, for pickup, for convenience and grocery. So we had some flavors of these, and all of this came together in a big new platform written in Kotlin, which exposes all of merchants' capabilities to the outside world and vice versa, takes in data from the outside world to process and consume right within DoorDash. And again, all of this needs to be multiplied by international now. So the scale in each one of these is best done modularized and is best done all together, centralized also in terms of giving different flavors such that we can keep the code short and sweet and not have to, kind of replicate it all over the place. So that's merchant integrations, and that's how we solve the problem of scaling for growth with merchant integrations. Now let's take the second problem, which is converting features to platforms, and how we created a feature to a platform using the merchant finance example of the contract platform, right? Next. So what exactly is a contract platform? Contract platform is the merchant finance, it is in the merchant finance world, and it takes care of merchant, this is where we take care of merchants signing with us on different financial terms, right? So for example, fees that we will collect, discounts that we will give, commission that is set, all of the backend behind, the backend platform that takes care of all of these variables is essentially the contract platform, right? And now you can just imagine with all of these new verticals that came in, now there wasn't a single contract that we had with these merchants anymore. We had like multiple contracts with these merchants, right? So we have, now a contract for say alcohol separate from restaurant. We have self-drive separate from us doing delivery. We have pickup separate from us doing delivery, right? And each of these needed to configure different fees, different discount, different commission, different variables, right? And what we had was not a flexible model at all initially. So we had to convert this whole thing from being a feature for restaurant to being a platform for everything. So next slide, please. Yeah, so this is a very, very simple architecture of how there was initially the first purple box on the right, which actually brought in data into the pink box there, the merchant financial services, right? But then slowly there were more purple boxes springing up everywhere. The storefront, this Caviar, which is like a company we acquired, and they have their own orders with different commission and fees. We have say pickup, we have self-delivery, we have delivering, which is and so all of these were converging into merchant financial services, which very much was a feature, and now we needed to convert it into a platform, right? So next slide there. All right, so this is like a very simplistic version of me explaining, a merchant has a commission rate, pickup was a separate column over there saying, different commission rate, subscription was, subscription commission was a different commission, right? And now if we needed self-delivery, we needed to go through a very rigid process of adding code changes and tables and all of that, right? So how did we solve this problem? Next slide, please. Right, so again, extremely simplistic version of what we did, a lot behind the scene, but we basically made it a platform. So every merchant now has a program. Every program has fees in it, right? Merchants can have multiple programs can have multiple fees. We can introduce a new fee, say when we go to Japan, and also when we went to Japan, we had new fees to introduce. We could just introduce it now with a lookup table change rather than all code changes, and that would get attached to all of the Japanese merchants, right? And so now we're making it an international platform. Now we're making it a platform for various merchants where new discounts, new fees getting added is just a matter of configuration. New countries getting added just is a matter of creating a new configuration as a program and attaching the different fees to it, right? And now we don't have to go through rigid changes. It's much more flexible as a model, right? And this flexibility is very, very needed as we go international, right? So that's the model over there, and this is how we made feature into platform in the merchant finance world for contract platform. Last but not the least, I'm going to talk about how we solve platform for international, right? The last point that Meetup had in his problems. So again, no diagrams over here, no frills, because we haven't made this, right? So the payout platform is a platform that we have in mind. Today, how we pay out is we pay out on PST time, weekly, Thursday, 2 p.m. in the night, 2 a.m. in the night, everybody gets money, right? But how can we make this? There are problems as we go international, right? They have the own jurisdictions in every city, country has different rules. You have to pay on the go. You have to pay daily. You have to pay weekly. You have to pay twice a week. I am a merchant that really has a big catering order and I don't have money to make that catering order. So please pay me on demand, right? So there are all of these problems that we have to think about. And we have to make sure we make a platform again where we allow merchants to get paid on their local time. We allow merchants to choose the cadence of their payment. We allow a merchant to have an ad hoc payment, for example, or the time of their payout, right? And so all of that, this is a platform which is on paper right now, which we want to build. So, we want help, more help, come lots of opportunities out there on the career side to visit it. And if you guys, please apply and please come help us build more than just these 3 examples. A lot more problems to solve here at DoorDash as we go international and expand into multiple verticals. Would be excited to get more help. That's me, and I'll introduce the next speaker here, Michael McCallan, and he's going to talk about helping Dashers get on the road quickly and easily and globally.
Thanks, Varsha. Hey, everyone. My name is Michael. I am a product manager on the international team, and I've recently been focused on Dashers and figuring out a lot of the problems related to Dashers and Dasher logistics. And I think kind of summarizing what we've been thinking about is we have a growing global presence, and we want to make sure that these things are true for Dashers in every market from the start, ideally. And so how can we help Dashers get on the road as quickly, easily, and now globally? So at a high level, there's a series of steps that every person needs to go through who wants to sign up to deliver with DoorDash as a Dasher. And I'll share just a little bit about each of these steps. So the very first thing you do is you start an application. And generally, this is very simple information, things like where do you plan to do deliveries, and a little about yourself, maybe your email and your phone number. And then you'll add more information about your profile that DoorDash needs to be able to start signing you up. So you'll create an account, you'll add some information about yourself, and then depending on your region, there might be personally identifiable information that you also need to provide to make sure you're eligible to Dash. Continuing on for there, it gets more complicated. And this is where, as we've expanded internationally, we've realized that there's more and more challenging problems to solve. So in particular, there's different checks we might run, things like identity verification, a background check, maybe a motor vehicle requirements check. And we have to make sure that as we grow and scale that we're meeting these requirements so that we can ensure that our Dashers are safe and protected, and we're creating safe outcomes and great delivery experience for customers and for merchants. After that, we have a series of steps that Dashers kind of complete once they've filled in all the necessary information, which is they might attend some additional training or orientation, especially in our newer markets, sort of a more hands-on approach. And then they get excited. Then they can actually finally get on the road. And whether that means just opening up the app and starting a first shift or actually scheduling that very first delivery, Dashers can finally get started. So with this in mind, we started to look at our different international experiences. And you can see here that from the very start, there are a lot of things that are similar, and then there are things that start to diverge. So you can see for the US, Japan, and Canada experiences, just in terms of entering your very first piece of information, which is where are you located, where do you plan to deliver, it already starts to look a little different. The length of the copy, the way that we validate this information, the requirements of what you need to provide as information and what you need to do to get started is a little different. And from here, next slide, please, it gets even more complicated because we start to go through some of those checks where historically, in the interest of speed, we've worked with different vendors who we felt could best serve those needs in their local market. So in Canada on the left, you can see an experience where someone is starting to go through the background check process. For Japan in the middle, you can see me in my remote, but actually what I should be doing is uploading my passport so that I can verify that I am who I say I am. And in Australia on the right, there's a very complicated series of steps due to the local regulation about the types of documents that you need to provide to complete a check and ensure, again, that you're eligible to work and that your background check is clear. Next slide. So with this in mind, we realized that we should have some principles about what are we going to build to make this a great experience. And so looking at these different experiences, the first thing that we talked about is we want the experience of signing up to Dash to be frictionless. And you can tell from the series of steps and kind of the differences in those experiences that this is something that we feel we can do more work on to really make true for Dashers. Secondly, an applicant should really never need to leave the DoorDash website. Even if we are moving quickly and we want to launch in new markets, we want to, as much as possible, integrate these pieces to our experience so that it's seamless from end to end, and you don't need to jump around to different websites and different services where you might not have clarity on, is this really for DoorDash, and what is my status, where am I in the application process? And finally, despite looking at a lot of similarities and themes here, we need the experience to feel local. Everything from the language we show, the assets, and then a lot of the legal and regulatory pieces here, we need to make sure that we are meeting those local expectations. So then the next question to ask naturally is, how can we get to these principles? How can we actually make this a thing for our experience? And so the way we've been going about kind of the problem identification is starting to look at those phases of sign up for Dasher and identifying which pieces of those are really shared global problems that we feel like could benefit from a more unified or generalized solution. And as we do that, then we can actually go on to build those solutions and say, can we solve this problem of gathering a certain piece of information or helping a Dasher get on the road as quickly and easily as possible in most of our markets, or maybe even all markets at once, by making a more generalized solution. And finally, as we work on these pieces one by one, we can start to roll them out globally and see how we can actually achieve our product principles. So with that all in mind, I will hand it over to Jerry now, who will talk about how we're actually going to achieve this on the tech side.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Exciting time here. Hello, everyone. This is Jerry. I'm a software engineer here, actually based out in Toronto at Go Raptors. So my main focus, since I joined, I have been focusing on international Dasher platform. Today, I'm going to talk to you guys about how we actually solve the international Dasher onboarding problem by building a platform with useful backend driven UIs. Next slide, please. Cool. All right, so what is the problem? As Michael suggested earlier, as you can see, every country has a very unique problem. So in Canada, in US, in Japan, they have their customized Dasher onboarding experience that we need to provide them in order to provide them a highly local experience when they start onboarding onto our platform. So this basically creates a lot of challenges for us since DoorDash started out in the US and we have done really, really well in the US market. And now that we need to expand internationally, how can we actually do that efficiently and without making people feel like this is the US only product? So we look at the problem, we look at basically all the onboarding kind of frameworks that we have. For example, for US, for Canada, for Japan, they have very different logics and behavior and experience, but all in all, they all comes down to very share underlying components. So the first thing that we thought about is how can we refactor them all together and group all the common elements together. And so that's when we thought about the Dasher onboarding platform, where we group all the common elements together under the same umbrella, generalizing the onboarding in a single application. And on top of that, we add the configurations, which are extremely lightweight and configurable on the fly, so that we can apply to each and every single countries that we expand to. Next slide. So to give you guys a rundown on a very, very simple example. So here is a JSON files on the left-hand side, and here is a profile setup page on the right-hand side. As you can see here, everything that is shown on the actual production page are rendered by a really simple JSON file. So here you can see this is the US sort of profile setup page. But as you can see in each country, for example, for Japan, we on top of just the legal first name and last name, we also ask for a separate set of names that is only applicable to Japan. And to do that, we simply add additional blocks of objects in the JSON configuration file, and it will just show up on the page for Japan only, and that will not affect every other countries. And it is as simple as just changing JSON without really making a new production change. So that's how we will go about doing a backend driven UI. Next slide, please. So what happens behind the scene? So everything starts with our database. So we have a set of applicant data, and we have a set of onboarding templates that we store, which are basically the JSON files and the configuration that I was talking about. From those two, we feed them into a backend controller, which help us compile the actual web templates, which will feed into the web templates builder. And eventually it emits out the page that is shown to the end user. And from the end user, once they provide us with all the user data, we will feed it back to the backend controller, store it on the applicant data table, and then move on to the next step, which will basically do the same thing over and over again until the Dasher has finished the entire onboarding experience. As you can tell here, there are many different reusable components here. So for example, on the front end, we refactor a lot of the components out and make them highly reusable so that every country, they can have their own configuration without really worrying about how should I show the UI, whether there's something we need to care about, et cetera, et cetera. And on the back end, same thing happens, which is, we have processors for different kind of fields that are highly reusable for each country without worrying about what the presentation layer should look like in each country. So what's the conclusion and what have we achieved? And in launching the new countries, right, instead of spending months of efforts trying to set things up, setting up how we worry about the names and how we worry about the address, like in certain countries, address start with the country name, but some other places like US and Canada, the address start with the street name. We reduce all of them down to weeks or even days of efforts to just launch the new country. Then that's all thanks to the reusable backend driven UIs, so that we can highly configure on the fly whenever we want to. And instead of creating just the UIs and logic just for the countries, we now take a global approach to think what the big picture, what every country needs, and start from there, making them highly configurable and reusable components, and start building things from there. And right now, we can all centralize our code base in the same place for all onboarding logic instead of separating out the country-specific logics. And we cut down our number of APIs from 50 plus almost identical APIs into just 3 reusable configurable APIs without worrying about duplication and missed logic when we need to expand our core logic. So that's all on the Dash onboarding platform.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jerry, and thank you to everyone who presented. So now we're going to do a quick panel discussion, and I'm going to ask my colleagues here a couple of questions that each can answer. So the first question, and by the way, for the Q&A questions you all are asking, please continue to ask in the Q&A tool, and we're going to, right after the panel, go and answer some of them live. So the first question I have is for Nirav. What are the high-level challenges you're thinking about solving as the 2022 comes around and maybe beyond that?
Yeah, I mean, on the merchant side, there's a number of things, right? I think let's start off with first, we still have a lot of opportunity for bringing on more restaurants and merchants across new verticals. Things like convenience, grocery, and so on. So really, how do we go and onboard these merchants? How do we get them onto the platform as quickly as possible? How do we get them an order as quickly as possible and have them see the value of DoorDash? Then there's colleagues that I have working on our merchant experience team. And really, they're focused on how do we get merchants to be really successful in DoorDash? How do they understand that this is a very different business operating model, right? You are going and selling things online through a digital channel, no longer in person. How do we get you to get, 1 order a day, now 5 orders a day, 10 orders a day, 100 orders a day, right? How do we actually go and get you to be successful on DoorDash? What sort of things do you need to be doing? And how can you use the platform to be successful? Can we drive insights about your customers of who's ordering, what they love, what they've had problems with? what are cuisine trends that are coming up? And so those are the kinds of things that we're thinking about to unlock, the real potential of what DoorDash can do for these merchants. And so those are two of the key things that we're really trying to do. In addition to, the other problems of, we got to go and continue to grow and scale this business. There's a big opportunity in front of us. And so we're trying to go and solve those problems across every single kind of merchant that we have.
Awesome. Thank you. And the next question I have is for Varsha. So you mentioned that, in this, throughout this whole talk, we talked about food and then going into other type of merchants. So we will have restaurants, we will have grocery stores, we will have others as well. How does the tech evolve to keep up with this level of variance in the type of merchants we support?
Yeah, I think tech evolving is a very iterative process. We definitely don't lose our North Star in terms of this is where we want to go, be a multinational, multi-product line company, which empowers all local businesses. That's our North Star, right? And then from there, how does tech evolve? Very, very broad question. But what I would say is in baby steps, right? So what we don't look for perfection. We roll out quickly, iteratively. And then, like Tony Xu has a famous quote, which we heard yesterday, roll products out first, roll out products that don't scale, and then figure out how to scale them, right? So yes, if we have like a new product line coming out, what we do is we do roll out things iteratively, which may not scale right now, but then once it's found its product market fit, and once it's found, that yes, it's a successful product to put more in time, invest more in, we iteratively figure out how to scale it. That's how we do things. I think DoorDash has a culture of bias for action. And so I think that, bias for action being the center of all things, we to find ways to scale as well as to roll out things quickly. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you, Varsha. The next one, maybe let's ask Jerry. So what is your favorite part of working at DoorDash?
Great. A lot of things, but if I have to pick one, I think what Basha just mentioned, the bias for action, definitely clicked for me a lot. As an engineer, I prefer doing more than talking most of the time. So, when I came to DoorDash, and then everyone is basically like that, and I just love that fact that we don't have to hold 3 meetings and 5 different hours of discussion in order to push through one initiative. Things that, just like what Andy said at the very beginning, we do what is best for the customer, and we are always customer obsessed, not competitive focused. So as an engineer, I chase for impact, I chase for bias and for actions. So obviously those are things that really attracted me to working at DoorDash. And it's just a short amount of time for me here, less than a year, but it's still it's truly a really amazing kind of culture influence I feel from around the team here. So yep, that's definitely my favorite part here.
Awesome. And then maybe one more. So Michael, question for you is, we talked about Dasher onboarding, and there was a fantastic innovation scaling that up. What is next on the horizon beyond that Dasher onboarding?
Yeah, definitely. I think Dasher onboarding, both figuratively and literally, is just getting started here. So the idea that a Dasher's experience and relationship with DoorDash only is beginning at the point where they complete onboarding and they're able to complete their first delivery or their first dash and hopefully have a great experience. I think even beyond that, there's just so much opportunity we've been thinking about. So how do we make the experience of delivering with DoorDash the best and the most preferable way to do flexible work anywhere DoorDash is live? And that's hard while we're scaling and growing the business and all sides of the business, because we're getting more merchants on board, we're getting more customers familiar with the brand and hopefully placing orders. And so making sure we can make dashing the best kind of work and the most rewarding kind of work is really important for us. And so I think as we move beyond onboarding, we'll think about that long Dasher life cycle and all the different touch points, the on a dash experience, the experience of getting paid, the rewards and incentives, all the communications we send, just make sure we can really be number one there.
Got it. Okay, so let's take some questions from the audience here. I think we have a bunch of questions accumulated. I'll try to pick some. The first one I will ask is, how does DoorDash maintain operational excellence when managing such large scale and complex platform? And what lessons learned with past experience? Yeah, I guess if anyone wants to jump in, I'm happy to take this one as well.
Varsha, maybe you can explain like how we've scaled up some of our platforms.
Sorry, I glitched for a bit. Can you tell me what the question is again?
Yeah, so the question is about operational excellence and how do we scale up to keep up with the complexity of the platform?
Yeah, so complexity of the platform is a good idea, a good question. How we scale, let me talk a little bit about how we structure our organization to take care of all of these problems while also maintaining a platform, right? So at the heart, definitely there is a platform team which is in charge of, say, like, let me give you a merchant integrations platform since I spoke to you guys, right? At the heart, there is a core platform team that takes care of the platform, but we definitely do have multiple parallel teams that actually take care of a problem. For example, pickup is a problem. So operationally, we have an engineering team as well as a product team that focuses, as well as a business team to go along with that, that focuses on pickup as a problem. Similarly, we have self-delivery as a problem, and we have a whole three-sided partnership going on over there separate from pickup, which takes care of self-delivery, for example, right? All of them might use the same platform or the engineering platform behind it, but they definitely are separate teams, and we encourage everybody to come onto the platforms and build the platform out for their needs, right? It does pose some challenges. Communication is super important. We try to make sure that we are actually communicating more than less to make sure that everybody understands what's being built on this platform. The core platform owners take care of the core platform features and functionality, monitoring, alerting, logging, security, authentication, authorization, all of that kind of goes into the platform team, but building products on top of that to customize it for a pickup or customize it for a self-delivery or customize it for DoorDash delivery, all of that happens in individual pods that sit on top of the platform. So that's kind of the structure in which we operate. We make sure we have focus on our problems. We make sure that we run with our problems, and we make sure that we do not do too many things at the same time, causing no business impact, right? So every team is very focused to their business metrics, and we drive each of those metrics up, right? So that's how we do. Operational excellence, again, can be a challenge, but I think over time we've figured out how to leverage operations, technical operations, versus how to leverage engineering as such, right? So what can we operationalize, which is more of merchant adoption, or what can we operationalize, which is more of like supporting dashers individually, right? Like which engineering doesn't want to do. How can we give clear products and tools and services to a tech ops or a layer outside of engineering, which would service a large scale, such that engineering and product focuses on the next set of problems that we want to solve and focuses on the mid-term to long term, while the adoption and the current problems as such are kind of offloaded onto a next layer. So I think we do this well. Definitely there are challenges because we're growing very fast, but I think tackling each problem at a time is how we go ahead and tackle all of this. So this is my first take. Meetup, do you want to talk from the product perspective? Operational excellence there?
Yeah, I think, and maybe this answers a couple of the questions on some of the differences between how DoorDash is operated versus some of our peers in the industry. At the end of the day, right, like what customers want from us, how consumers think about, why do they pick a delivery platform, one versus the other is first selection. Do you have what I want to order? 2, price. Do you have that thing at a price that's reasonable? And 3, quality. Do I trust you to actually go and bring me that item at the right speed, at the right temperature, if it's a pizza or ice cream or something like that? And those are the 3 things, right? It sounds really basic, but those are the 3 things that really differentiate the services. What has really made DoorDash, far different is we have executed on all 3 of those things, far better, than I've seen, any company that I've worked in or any other place, because we've had a relentless focus on saying, what does our customer really want? I take the engineering team out to visit our merchants because I think it's vitally important that they understand exactly what they're thinking. And so because that's going to help us build better products, we're going to go and execute it. We have that strong bias for action. We're going to go and test things out faster than anybody else. We're going to learn really quickly. If you look at the products that we've launched, those are a small subset of the things that we've actually built because we've tested so many things, and said, hey, these aren't good ideas, or we need to go and iterate on them. And so it is that relentless focus. This is a business where you are fighting for every single local city, and you have to be ready to execute, right? The engineering team has to be ready to go and say, hey, we're going to be lighting up, thousands of cities. We're going to be going and, going and winning Toronto and Winnipeg and, Montreal. And we need to go and be ready for those things from a scaling perspective, from an operational team perspective, from a product perspective. So it is, it's execution is the game. It is exactly what we need to do, but execution means doing all of those things consistently, making sure we have a fully reliable service. It is delivering high quality. We're bringing prices down. We have what you want. And so it sounds basic, but those are the ways that we have built and differentiated DoorDash time and time again in every single geography we operate in.
Got it. Awesome. Thank you, Varsha and Nirav. Next one, pretty interesting question. How do you launch in a new country when you don't have dashers or restaurants first? It's kind of a chicken or egg problem to solve.
I mean, I can take the merchant side of it. You start with the egg. I think that's the answer, right? Like essentially first you need to have the thing that people want to order. And so, we need to get, the first thing that we usually start off with is let's go get a ton of merchants onto the platform. Let's make sure that they're ready, a couple of months ahead of time, because, they're okay with us, having these conversations and saying, sign up for DoorDash now, we'll be live in a couple of months. If you're a dasher, that probably doesn't work. If you're a dasher, you want to work now, you want to make money, really shortly. So, that one is compressed, probably into like a month or a couple of, 6 weeks or something before launch. We go and try to get, dashers ready, train them up on what to do in those markets. And then the last one is the consumers, right? We go and say, okay, when we're live, when we know the merchant's going to be online, the dashers are ready to work, then the consumers get told, hey, DoorDash is ready for business, come and order. And that's how we get the flywheel started. That's why, we start off with making the value proposition to the merchants. And then, once they see that, we can build up that marketplace in that area, kind of everything feeds off of itself. Dashers want to work, on the platform. More consumers want to order because more merchants are coming in because they see, the brand out in the market and more consumers ordering.
Got it. Thank you, Nirav. The next one is from Steven. Maybe a question for Michael or Jerry. Why not build country-specific apps for dashers or make a model that is flexible enough to support the onboarding without having to have screens designed on the fly?
Yeah, I can take this. I think as we think beyond the onboarding experience and we think about the Dasher app, which is a Dasher's primary point of contact when they're actually completing deliveries, we certainly have considered, what are the needs here and what is different by country versus what are the similarities. And I think the reality and the tough answer is like, there are a lot of themes and there are a lot of things that we want to be able to generalize and make better everywhere for international. There are also some of these unique requirements. And so I think part of this as a team is the platform team collaborates with our regional business leads to make sure that we understand the unique needs and the things that they feel are really important for us to actually be able to win in any market. And then we say, which of these do we feel like we can solve in a generalized way, or maybe by our existing platform and capabilities, and which ones might we need a new capability, or we might need to collaborate with those regional teams to build what's best for the market. So there's, I think, again, as Varsha said, it's always about the communication, understanding what are the core capabilities we have, and then what's the gap between that and where we need to be.
Got it. I think we're 1 minute left, but just one quick one for maybe Nirav or Michael. What are the unique challenges you saw in Japan, Canada, or Australia?
Michael, do you want to start off with that one?
Yeah, I can go for this. I was actually working on our Japan launch earlier this year, so I definitely saw this firsthand, which is one of the biggest ones. Is the more we expand, the more the team is exposed to new and different cultures and new and different expectations. And so there are a lot of core expectations, like Nirav was saying. As a customer, there's certain restaurants I want to get the right price, and I want to feel confident that the order will be delivered with a high degree of quality. But when you get into it, there's cultural expectations around timeliness, around what quality means and what the threshold is for quality, around how cost conscious individuals or certain areas might be, and around their expectations on what merchants they want to order from. So I think some of the challenges are just understanding what are those different expectations for each audience, customer, dasher, and merchant, and how do we serve those, or what might we need to do to better serve those in any new market.
Yeah, and there's a lot of differences, right, in each of our markets that we've had to face, right? For example, in Japan, right, just like the payments processing is going to be very different, right? We have to go and enable those things. There's culturally, just different preferences from users. We offer social logins in our markets, but in Japan, line is the way that people are actually, communicating with each other. So if we can build that, that's actually the preferred way to go and try to log in. So there's just so many different things that you'll see between, a lot of the countries that we operate in. And that's why we have a real strong thesis that we want to be, we want to act local. We want to have these teams think like locals to actually make, the products successful for those markets. So, that was definitely, and we've run into problems, across the board, right, that we've had to go and solve. For merchants as well, they have very different expectations, even for the dasher side training, and the logistics system has to adjust for all of those markets as well.
Got it. We're 2 minutes over time. I would like to thank everyone for attending this talk, and also thank our panelists for taking the time to speak to us. If you are interested in roles at DoorDash, the link has been shared in the chat. It's careers.doordash.com. Please reach out to any of us if you have any questions, and thank you so much for your time.